My towel eventually gave way, falling to the floor in a soft heap. "Maria," he breathed, his voice filled with awe as his eyes were fixed on me. He traced his fingers along my curves, his touch reverent as if he was memorizing every inch of me. This is how it all started. I would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Every click of yours is valuable to us, as it gives us more motivation to continue sharing more meaningful stories with you. If you like our content, we encourage you to share and leave questions below. Every interaction is a way to build a closer and more connected community, and I invite you to stay with us until the end of the video. I am very grateful to you. My name is Maria, and though I say so myself, beauty has always been my companion at 65. My curvy figure, smooth skin, and full, captivating smile make people turn their heads. My thick gray hair falls in soft waves past my shoulders, and my eyes are a warm, honeyed brown that seems to hold a secret that draws people in. Even in my quiet life, where I have distanced myself from romantic pursuits since my husband's passing, I still feel the weight of stares and whispers wherever I go, but none of that matters to me anymore. My life has been peaceful and predictable even, and I've grown used to it. I have chosen to stay away from love. It's not as if there haven't been offers. Men of all ages, some gray-haired gentlemen seeking companionship and others young enough to be my sons, have tried to persuade me, but I always decline. I tell myself I'm too old for the games of romance deep inside, though I know it's more than that. I've locked my heart away. I've lived with loss, and the thought of opening that door again terrifies me. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, I received a call from Greg. My nephew Greg is my elder sister's only son. He's in his mid-30s, full of energy with a mischievous grin that seems to promise trouble. His tall, athletic frame and confident swagger often make heads turn, especially the women's. My sister Lucy has called me countless times to complain about his flirty nature. "Maria," she'd say, "this boy is going to give me a heart attack one day. He won't stop chasing skirts." I would always laugh it off, telling her it's just a phase. Boys' ages are often like that. But deep down, I knew Greg was different. There was something about the way he carried himself, a charm, an undeniable magnetism, that made it easy for women to fall for him, even when they knew better. "Hi, Aunt Maria." Greg's voice was cheerful over the phone. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied. "What's going on?" "I was wondering if it would be possible for me to spend the weekend at your place." "I just need a bit of a break from everything." Greg's voice came through the phone, hesitating slightly. I paused momentarily, caught off guard. Greg, my nephew, rarely reached out with such requests. It wasn't like him to ask for a place to stay without a specific reason, especially when his social life and career seemed to keep him busy. My home, a quiet retreat tucked away from the bustle of the city, was a cozy and calm space with a garden in the back, a far cry from the kind of excitement a young man like Greg would typically enjoy. Yet, there was something in his tone that made me reconsider. It wasn't just a casual request. There seemed to be an unspoken need beneath his words. After a brief pause, I replied, feeling a mix of concern and affection. "Of course, Greg," I said warmly. "You're always welcome here. Anytime you need to get away, this is your home too." "Thanks," Aunt Maria responded, his voice a little lighter. "I'll be there by Friday evening once we hang up." A wave of curiosity settled over me. What was he running from? Was it something to do with a woman, a relationship gone wrong, or maybe falling out with his mother? Greg was always a bit of a mystery, full of surprises and layers that made him seem like someone I couldn't fully read. I couldn't help but wonder what had brought him to seek refuge here and what this weekend might reveal. As Friday approached, the hours seemed to slip away quickly, and before I knew it, evening had arrived. I was sitting in the living room when I heard the unmistakable sound of his car pulling into the driveway. I stood up eager yet slightly anxious to see him opening the door. I was greeted by the sight of Greg standing there, a familiar yet slightly changed version of the young man I had known for years, dressed casually in a pair of dark jeans and a fitted black t-shirt that outlined his athletic frame. He looked effortlessly handsome. His smile was as bright and warm as always, but there was something more in his eyes, a flicker of restlessness, a quiet tension that didn't match his usual confident demeanor. "Aunt Maria," he called out, his voice filled with affection as he pulled me into a tight hug. "You look amazing as always." I couldn't help but chuckle at his charm, a trait he never seemed to lose no matter how much time passed. "And you're as charming as ever," I replied, laughing. "Come on in, let's get you settled." As Greg stepped through the door, his eyes scanned the familiar surroundings of my home. The cozy living room bathed in the soft glow of ambient lighting welcomed him. The comforting scent of fresh baked bread still lingered in the air, adding to the warmth of the space. My home had always been a peaceful refuge, a place where one could breathe a little easier. But tonight, as Greg looked around, I could sense that he was trying to find his place in it, like someone trying to find peace in a moment of quiet chaos. What had brought him here, and what was he really hoping to find this weekend? I had a feeling I was about to find out. "Wow," he said, settling into the couch with a sigh as if the weight of the world had momentarily lifted. "I really missed this place." I chuckled and teased, "You're acting like it's been years since you were last here." He leaned back, closing his eyes briefly before replying, "Well, it feels like it's been a whirlwind lately, and I haven't had a chance to catch my breath." I raised an eyebrow. My curiosity piqued. I stayed silent, hoping he'd elaborate, but he simply shook his head with a faint smile as though he wasn't ready to dive deeper just yet. As the evening wore on, we moved outside to the garden, the gentle breeze weaving through the trees and carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The peaceful atmosphere seemed to coax him into speaking more freely. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves providing a soft background hum. Eventually, Greg broke the silence. "You know, Aunt Maria," he began, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a never-ending loop. The parties, the women. Sure, it's fun at first, but after a while it all just feels draining." His words caught me off guard. This wasn't the confident carefree. Greg was used to the young man who had always carried himself with an air of effortless charm. He was now laying bare his vulnerability. A wave of concern swept over me as I realized just how much he'd been carrying on his shoulders. I considered his words for a moment before responding softly, "Maybe it's time for a change." Greg sighed, his gaze turning distant as he stared out at the garden. "Maybe," he murmured, "but it's not that simple. People have these expectations of me, you know. It's like I can't step off the path they've laid out for me without letting them down." I moved closer, gently placing a hand on his. "Greg," I said, my voice steady but full of compassion, "you don't have to live up to anyone else's expectations. You're still so young. You have time to figure things out and live life on your own terms." For a long moment, he stared at me. His eyes searched mine with an intensity I hadn't expected. There was something unspoken between us, something in the depth of his gaze that made my heart skip a beat. It unsettled me, though I couldn't pinpoint why. The weekend passed by in a blur of serene, quiet moments and conversations that seemed to stretch endlessly. Greg, initially reserved, began to relax more as the days unfolded, and I found myself gradually becoming more comfortable in his company. It was a pleasant surprise, one I hadn't anticipated, but as the weekend wore on, I began to appreciate his presence more than I thought possible. Still, there were these fleeting moments, so subtle yet unmistakable, when I would catch him looking at me in a way that stirred something deep inside. It was nothing overt or obvious, just the occasional lingering glance or a soft, almost secretive smile that felt different, like there was more being said in that quiet exchange than words could convey. Greg's stay at my house turned out to be unexpectedly sweet in a way I never could have predicted. He somehow breathed new life into the otherwise quiet spaces of my home. His energy and laughter filled the rooms, and he teased me in a playful, almost boyish way that made me feel lighter, as though the weight of the years had momentarily lifted. There was an infectious quality to his presence that made my home feel alive in a way I hadn't experienced in what felt like forever. One afternoon, as we stood together in the kitchen preparing vegetables for dinner, I couldn't help but smile at how effortlessly he seemed to bring joy into the simplest of tasks. His hands moved with a swift, practiced rhythm, but every so often he would pause, grab a piece of cucumber, and pop it into his mouth with a grin that made me chuckle. I looked at him and said, "You're spoiling me." My tone was half teasing, half earnest. He shot me a playful wink, his expression warm and sincere. "You deserve it, Aunt Maria," he said, his voice full of affection. "You do so much for everyone else. It's about time someone took care of you for a change." His words settled deep within me, warming me in a way I hadn't expected. It had been such a long time since anyone had made me feel truly pampered, and Greg did it so naturally without ever making a fuss. Whether it was brewing a perfect cup of tea in the morning or fixing little things around the house that I'd long since stopped noticing, his actions spoke volumes. He made me feel cared for and appreciated in a way I hadn't experienced in years. And I realized, perhaps for the first time, how much I had been missing that kind of attention. But it wasn't just his kindness that had a profound effect on me. It was also Greg's playful nature that left a lasting mark. His lightheartedness was so contagious, and it often took me by surprise. He had this uncanny ability to sneak up behind me without warning, catching me off guard with a sudden hug or a gentle kiss pressed to my cheek or the back of my neck. Every time he did it, I'd gasp in surprise, only to hear his voice teasing yet affectionate. "Aunt Maria, you're always so serious, you need to loosen up a little." I couldn't help but laugh at his antics, playfully swatting him away, yet even as I did, I couldn't shake the warmth that lingered long after his hands had left me. His touch, so light but so deliberate, would stay in my thoughts, occupying my mind in a way I couldn't fully explain. One evening, I was sitting on the couch engrossed in a book when Greg suddenly popped down beside me with his usual carefree manner. Without a second thought, he threw his arm casually over my shoulders, leaning in to peer at the pages. I was so absorbed in his proximity, it was almost dizzying, and I could feel the warmth of his body close to mine. "Is it a love story?" His voice was low and teasing, but with a note of curiosity that only made me more aware of him than I'd like to admit. "It's none of your business," I retorted quickly, my cheeks flushing with embarrassment as I felt the heat of his gaze on me. Greg chuckled at my response, his laugh rich and deep, and it sent a shiver down my spine. He shifted even closer, his fingers brushing lightly against my arm as he adjusted his position. The brief contact was enough to send a jolt through me, and I immediately stood up, pretending to adjust the curtains in an attempt to hide the sudden unease I felt. "You're too restless," I muttered, trying my best to sound irritated, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "You love it," Greg replied, his voice dripping with mischief. And that grin of his, playful and knowing, made my breath catch in my throat. I didn't respond, choosing instead to turn away from him, but I couldn't escape the feeling that he had somehow unsettled me in a way I hadn't expected. Days passed, but the impact of Greg's presence was undeniable. His playful touches, the way his eyes seemed to linger on me, and the intimacy in his gestures, so casual yet so intimate, began to affect me in ways I couldn't control. It wasn't just his words or actions, it was the way he made me feel alive, awakened in a way that I hadn't realized I was missing. I found myself anticipating his hugs, the teasing remarks, the way his mirror proximity made me feel a sense of excitement and longing. It was becoming impossible to deny. It was late one night, the house unusually still, the only sounds being the soft hum of the ceiling fan above and the occasional chirp of crickets from outside. I was alone in the kitchen putting away the dishes when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned to find Greg walking in, his muscular chest and arms bare, the dim light from above casting soft shadows across his skin. The sight of him so effortlessly confident and unguarded made my heart race, but I couldn't quite place why. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been before, like he was trying to reach through the barrier. I had put up. "Not really," I replied, my gaze flickering briefly to him before quickly looking away. Feeling the weight of his attention, he took a slow step forward, closing the distance between us, and leaned against the counter. His posture relaxed, but his eyes searched mine, waiting for me to meet him halfway. "You've been quiet today," he observed, his tone laced with concern. "Is everything okay?" I nodded, but the way my chest tightened told a different story. There was a tension between us that hadn't been there before, thick and almost tangible. I could feel it wrapping around us, and his eyes, like magnets, pulled me in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and expectant. Finally, he broke it, his voice a whisper that seemed to hang in the air. "You know, Aunt Maria," he said, his words lingering like a confession, "you're the most beautiful woman I've ever known." The breath caught in my throat, and I froze. His words struck me in a way I wasn't prepared for, sending a jolt of something electric through me. My heart pounded. every beat too loud in the stillness between us. "Greg, don't say things like that." I managed my voice, barely above a whisper, and my eyes avoided his, unable to meet the intensity there. "Why not?" he asked, his voice steady, but there was something vulnerable in it too, something that made it hard for me to push away. "It's the truth." He took another step forward, his hand reaching out slowly, almost as if he were giving me the chance to stop him, but I didn't. His fingers gently brushed a strand of hair away from my face, and the touch, though soft, was enough to make my breath catch in my throat. The contact seemed to set off a series of reactions inside me that I couldn't control. A pull. I couldn't ignore. "Greg, this isn't what I began," but he interrupted me before I could finish. This isn't what his voice was low now, almost a murmur, but it held an undeniable certainty. I felt my heart racing. My mind was a swirl of conflicting emotions. I opened my mouth to protest, to say anything to stop this before it went any further, but no words came. Instead, all I could do was stand there frozen as his hand slid to my waist, the heat from his touch burning through my clothes, pulling me closer against him, closer than I had ever imagined. Could feel the strength in his arms as they wrapped around me, his body radiating warmth, a heat that seemed to ignite something inside of me, something I had tried to keep buried. The space between us vanished, and all that was left was the rapid beat of my heart, the pressure of his body against mine. "Greg, we can't," I whispered, my voice trembling, but even as the words left my lips, my body didn't move away. It stayed pressed against his, betraying everything I had told myself was true. His lips brushed lightly against my cheek, so close to my mouth that I could almost feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. The brief touch made my breath hitch in my throat, and for a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Time hung suspended. The moment stretched out until it was unbearably thick with the weight of our unspoken desires. I don't know how long we stayed like that, neither of us moving, neither of us breaking the silence. All the words that needed to be said were left unsaid, but they filled the space between us, thick and charged. Finally, I broke away, my chest rising and falling with each uneven breath, my heart pounding in my ears. Good night. It was as if something was building between us, something I couldn't ignore, and no matter how much I tried to fight it, I knew it was only a matter of time before it all came to a head. The afternoon heat was unbearable, and I decided that a cool shower would offer the perfect relief. My room was peaceful, the quiet broken only by the distant hum of the outside world. Sunlight poured through the window, casting soft patterns on the walls, creating a serene atmosphere that felt almost surreal. I had just stepped out of my clothes, the fabric falling to the floor as I wrapped myself in a soft white towel. Its texture was soothing against my skin, and I could feel the coolness of the fabric as I held it close. My hair was loosely tied back, a few strands escaping to frame my face, giving me an almost unintentional, careless look that only seemed to add to the calm of the moment. I was just about to step toward the bathroom when it struck me I'd left my phone sitting on the coffee table in the living room. It didn't seem pressing. The phone had been ringing nonstop, but nothing had indicated any urgency. It could certainly wait a few minutes, but then just as I was about to turn the knob, I heard the soft but deliberate sound of footsteps outside my door. The steps stopped just outside, followed by a hesitant knock. "Aunt Maria," Greg's voice called out from the other side of the door. Before I could even think of responding, the door creaked open, and there he stood in the doorway, holding my phone in his hand. His eyes met mine, and for a split second, he seemed taken aback. "Your phone's been," his words trailed off as his gaze fell on me. I stood there, wrapped only in a towel, my skin still damp from the shower. The steam in the room clung to me, making my bare shoulders shimmer faintly. I saw the shock register on his face, his eyes widening with surprise. And for a heartbeat, he froze, his mouth opening as though trying to finish his sentence. But no words came. In that moment, I could feel my pulse, quicken my heart racing in my chest. The room, which had felt so spacious just moments ago, now seemed to close in around us, and the air grew thicker with every passing second. "Greg," I whispered, my voice almost inaudible, but it was enough. My throat tightened, and I couldn't bring myself to say more before I could process what was happening. Greg moved. His movements were swift and deliberate, and before I even had the chance to comprehend what was unfolding, He was standing right in front of me. His strong hands reached up, cupping my face gently, yet with an undeniable firmness. His fingers traced the line of my jaw as his eyes locked with mine. An unmistakable mix of hesitation and something else, something deeper, flickered in his gaze. I felt a shiver run through me as if his eyes were searching for something within me, a connection that was suddenly undeniable. "Aunt Maria, I can't hold back anymore," he whispered, his voice low and filled with raw and desperate emotion. And then, without any further warning, he kissed me. The kiss was not what I had expected. It was electric, charged with a force that left me breathless. His lips were soft but insistent, moving against mine with a kind of fierce tenderness that I couldn't resist. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to react, shocked, stunned, my mind struggling to catch up with my racing heart. But as his hand slid from my waist and pulled me closer, I felt something stir inside me, something that had lain dormant for far too long, a hunger, a deep, aching need I hadn't realized was there until that very moment. "Greg," I whispered, breaking the kiss just enough to speak, but he didn't let me finish. His lips came back to mine, silencing me with a deep, passionate kiss that left me trembling deeper this time, more urgent. The intensity of the moment pressed against us. The towel slipped slightly, its fabric giving way under the growing tension, and instinctively I clutched it tighter. But Greg's hands were already there, steady, sure, holding me with such tenderness, like I was something invaluable, something he'd been waiting for. "I've wanted to do this for a very long time," he confessed, in a voice that was raw, filled with yearning, almost horror. His words washed over me like a wave, sending an electric thrill through my body. I didn't have the chance to overthink it before my own instincts took over. Without hesitation, my arms found their way around his neck, pulling him closer. Our bodies fit together with an ease that startled me. I kissed him back. The urgency of it was surprising. Even I, as if this moment had been building for years. The afternoon sun, once warm and gentle, now seemed to blaze hotter, its rays intensifying as we lost ourselves in each other's presence. Time seemed to slow, the world outside fading away until there was only us. Tangled together in this stolen, reckless intimacy, eventually my towel gave way entirely, falling to the floor in a soft heap forgotten. In the heat of the moment, "Maria," he breathed, his voice thick with awe, his eyes locked onto mine, filled with a depth that left me breathless. His fingertips traced the curves of my body with such reverence as if he were memorizing every inch of me. Each touch was tender and deliberate. I knew what we were doing was dangerous and forbidden. Even a part of me screamed to stop, to pull away before we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But in that instant, every ounce of reason, every shred of restraint, melted away. All I could feel was the raw, overwhelming sensation of being alive in a way that made me feel cherished, desired in a way I hadn't in so long. Greg held me with a reverence that made my heart swell. His warm and steady hand slid down my back, tracing every curve with such tenderness that I shivered. My body responded to his touch in ways I couldn't have anticipated. His lips brushed against my neck, soft and lingering, sending waves of heat through my entire body, leaving me trembling. "Maria," he whispered, his voice low and trembling against my ear. The intimacy of it made my heart race. "You're so beautiful. I've never seen anyone like you." The way he said my name, the tenderness in his voice, made my heart skip a beat. A blush spread across my cheeks, and when I looked up at him, his gaze was locked onto mine, fierce, intense, and full of emotion that left me breathless. Slowly, he leaned in again, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that was deeper this time, filled with unspoken promises, passion, and longing that we both seemed to share as the kiss deepened. Greg's hands roamed over my arms and my shoulders down to my waist. His touch was gentle but firm, pulling me closer and enveloping me in his strong embrace like he never wanted to let me go. I could feel the heat of his body pressed against mine, his heartbeat steady and strong, echoing in my chest, reminding me that we were both here in this moment together. "Greg," I whispered, my voice barely audible, trembling with the depth of the emotions rushing through me. But he silenced me with another kiss, deeper this time, as if he couldn't get enough. His lips moved against mine with a confidence that left me breathless. Every touch was more urgent than the last one of his hands cued my face. his thumb gently brushing over my skin as his eyes bored into mine with an expression that was both tender and intense, filled with a quiet awe. "I've dreamed of this," he confessed, his voice low, thick with emotion, "of holding you, of being close to you. You have no idea what you mean to me." His raw and vulnerable words made my heart ache in the best possible way, opening a floodgate of emotions. I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. I reached up, my fingers trembling as they traced the line of his jaw, marveling at how real he felt, how solid and tangible, as if he could be the answer to everything I'd been missing. I didn't know I could feel this way again. I admitted my voice was shaking, the vulnerability of the moment making my chest tighten. "You deserve to feel this way," Greg said, his voice unwavering, filled with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "You deserve to be loved, to be cherished, to feel wanted. You deserve this, Maria." His words wrapped around me like a promise, and in that moment, I realized that I was ready to let go of everything that had held me back. The moment felt almost dreamlike, as though we were suspended in a world of our own, the only two people who existed in that entire universe. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the window, its golden rays spilling across the room, enveloping us in a soft, comforting warmth that seemed to heighten the magic of the moment. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice filled with tenderness as his eyes locked with mine, searching for any sign of uncertainty or hesitation. He seemed to be waiting for some kind of affirmation, as though he could sense the depth of the emotions swirling between us. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice quieter now, vulnerable in its honesty, "but I don't regret it. Not at all." Greg's smile was gentle and full of warmth. His hand reached up to brush a stray lock of hair from my face, the touch as familiar as it was tender. "Neither do I," he said, his words simple but carrying an unspoken promise of something more. For a while we lay there together, the weight of the world outside forgotten, savoring the closeness and intimacy of the moment. There was a quiet comfort in the silence between us, the feeling that for once, nothing else mattered except the bond we shared. But as time passed and the light of the afternoon began to wane, a shift began to take place inside me. The reality of the situation, the significance of what had just happened slowly crept into my thoughts, unsettling the calm that had enveloped me later that evening as the sun dipped below the horizon. I found myself in the garden, the cool evening breeze brushing against my skin, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers. I sat on the edge of the stone bench, my mind racing, trying to piece everything together. What did this mean for us? Had we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Could we simply return to how things were before, or had we changed something fundamental between us, something we couldn't undo? The uncertainty gnawed at me. The weight of it was heavy on my chest as I sat there lost in thought, wondering what the future would hold. Greg walked in quietly, his presence a soothing contrast to the whirlwind of emotions that had been churning inside me all afternoon. He had that ability to settle my thoughts. Yet somehow, when he was near, the feelings I'd been struggling to suppress came rushing back. Impossible to ignore. Aunt Maria. Greg began, his voice low but steady, carrying both softness and an unyielding resolve. "I know this is complicated, but I don't regret anything that happened today. And more than anything, I don't want it to end here not like this." I turned to face him. My heart is heavy with the weight of conflicting emotions. Confusion, desire, guilt, and yet an undeniable longing too. His words, though calm, sent a ripple of unease through me. "Greg, this isn't just complicated, it's wrong," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He met my gaze without hesitation, a fire in his eyes that made me feel as though he wasn't backing down. "Why?" he asked, a challenge in his tone. "Is it because of what others might say, because of the age difference between us?" I paused, trying to steady my breath. The truth was, it wasn't about what people might think or the years between us. It wasn't about any of the things I was supposed to be worried about. "No," I whispered, "none of that matters to me. What matters is how I feel about you. That's what's making this so difficult to process." His words hit me in a place that went deeper than I could put into words. He was being honest, raw even, and I could see the sincerity in his eyes. I wanted to believe him, to let myself follow him wherever the strange and terrifying path might lead, but a deeper, darker fear held me back. Fear of judgment, fear of what I was risking, fear of losing control. Days passed, but the tension between us didn't ease. If anything, it grew stronger, lingering in every room we shared. Greg, ever patient, gave me the space I needed but never let me forget that his feelings hadn't wavered. He didn't push, but he didn't let go either. And despite my efforts to create distance to silence the feelings stirring inside me, I couldn't deny the pull I felt every time he was near. That moment, that heat from earlier in the day had changed something between us. I could feel it in my bones and the way the air seemed to hum whenever he was close. I just didn't know if I had the courage to admit it, to give in to it, or if fear would win and drive us apart forever. That evening, the air felt thick with unspoken words, thick enough that I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I sat on the couch trying to distract myself with the television, but my mind kept wandering back to him, back to us. I didn't hear him approach, but somehow I felt his presence before his voice broke the silence. "Aunt Maria," he said softly, his voice carrying a note of hesitation that melted into determination. I looked up to find him standing there, his expression open and vulnerable yet filled with a quiet strength. His eyes locked onto mine, searching for something, maybe reassurance, maybe understanding, and without another word, he moved to sit beside me. The distance between us was gone in an instant, and I could feel the warmth of his body, the heat of his proximity spreading through me. "I don't want to keep pretending," Greg confessed in a low but clear voice. "I don't want to act like nothing happened when all I can think about is you." The words hung in the air, and the weight of them settled heavily on my chest. He didn't look away, waiting for me to say anything, but all I could do was stare at him, overwhelmed by everything I couldn't yet understand. "Greg, this isn't easy for me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I've lived my life so carefully, so cautiously, and now everything is so different, so overwhelming." He gave me a soft, understanding look. "Maybe it's time for something different," he said, gently, his voice calm and soothing. He reached for my hand, his fingers wrapping around mine with a steady warmth that felt like a lifeline. His touch was reassuring, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. I looked at him, then really looked at him, past the familiar. Charming young man I'd known for so long, and saw someone who truly cared about me, not just as a family member, not just as his aunt, but as a woman, someone who saw me for all that I was, and all that I had yet to become in that instant. Something inside me shifted like a quiet wave rolling through me, changing everything in its wake. Without fully thinking, I leaned toward him, drawn by a force I couldn't resist, closing the small space that separated us. My lips found his in a kiss that was tentative at first, soft, almost unsure, but quickly deepened as the world around us faded. His hands moved to cut my face, his thumbs brushing gently over my cheeks, sending a shiver down my spine. The kiss was more than just a simple act. It was an expression of all the unspoken emotions between us, a silent promise that we both understood. He kissed me as though I were the only person that mattered in that moment, the only thing in the world worth his attention. When we finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, I could see the intensity in his gaze, a look that made my heart race even faster. His eyes were locked on mine with a depth that sent a thrill through me. From that moment on, everything between us changed. There was no going back, no pretending that things were the same. Greg and I found ways to steal moments together, quiet, private moments where time seemed to slow down. Whether we were cooking side by side in the kitchen, our laughter filling the air, taking slow, peaceful walks through the garden, or simply sitting together on the couch. The world outside no longer mattered. Each shared moment felt like a small, precious treasure. Greg was always thoughtful, always finding ways big and small to show me how much I meant to him. He would surprise me with flowers picked from the garden, the bright colors a stark contrast to the quiet of our lives. He left sweet handwritten notes in places where I'd find them on the kitchen counter, tucked into the pages of my book, always at just the right moment. And whenever we were alone, his hand was always reaching for mine, his fingers interlacing with mine like he was holding on to something he never wanted to let go of. One evening, as we sat outside under the vast star-filled sky, Greg turned to me, his expression serious and contemplative. The air was cool, but his presence next to me warmed me to the core. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice steady, filled with an emotion that was raw and unshakable. "I'm not going anywhere. Well, whatever happened, whatever challenges we face, I'm here. I'm with you." Tears sprang to my eyes, the weight of his words sinking deep into my heart. I reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "Greg, you've brought so much light into my life. I don't know what I'd do without you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He gave me a soft smile, one that made my heart ache with love. "You'll never have to find out," he replied, pulling me into his arms, and in that moment, wrapped in the warmth of his embrace, I knew without a doubt that we were in this together. No matter what the future held, our love blossomed into something deeply personal, a secret that we cherished, a bond that only grew more profound with every single day that passed. We understood well that the world around us might never truly comprehend the depth of what we shared, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the solace we found in each other's company, the unspoken comfort we offered in the quiet moments we spent together. Our hearts, once weighed down by the complexities of life, became lighter with every embrace, filled with a love so full it seemed to overflow into every aspect of our lives. Greg brought me back to life, igniting a spark I thought had long since faded. For the first time in many years, I let myself hope again, allowing myself to believe in the possibility of happiness. In his embrace, I discovered a love that was tender and fierce in equal measure, a love that was not only real, but uniquely ours, a love that had its own rhythm and pulse, one we held close and protected from the world. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Before we say goodbye, if you have not yet subscribed, I invite you to press the subscribe button. Your support, even if it seems like a small gesture, means a lot to us and drives us to continue creating content with heart. Don't forget to give it a like if you liked what we shared today, as every interaction helps us grow and allows us to continue connecting with you through stories that matter. Thank you for being part of this community.